guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. I hope that you have watched my previous two YouTube videos. If you haven't watched them yet, then please go watch them. I will link them in the description box down below. It's all about design and it's all about the tutorials. So yeah, if you're looking for some design tips and tricks, then go check them out. Today we are actually diving into Photoshop. I'm very excited. Photoshop is my favorite Adobe Creative Cloud Suite app. I find it very versatile, it's very flexible. I tend to edit close to everything in this app, so yeah, it's a lot of fun. It has a lot of tools and it has a lot of interesting things you can do with just about any digital file, so it's a super cool app to have. Up on the screen I actually have one of my posters that I designed for university. I'm in my honors year, so we just have this post up on the screen and we're going to be editing this. I'm just going to be showing you all the basic tools. So to the left you'll see there's a sidebar. These are all the basic tools. You can drag the sidebar off, you can put it wherever you want really, as you can see, but I just prefer to keep it on this side. Most importantly, you should actually firstly go to window and go to your workspace and see that it is in Essentials default. Then you can maybe follow along, try out some of the some of the move tools with me. Oh my gosh. Move tools. If you are trying all the tools out with me, then just make sure it's in Essentials default. If it's not in Essentials, then you're going to be working with 3D motion, painting, photography, whatever the case may be. But I find the Essentials workspace to be the most basic and the easiest to learn. So if you are a beginner, then that is the workspace that you should be picking. Okay, so from there we can just head on over to the first tool. The first tool is called the Move tool. Oh, and one more thing. There are little arrows on the bottom right corner of all of your little tools to the left of your screen. So on a Mac, if you click and hold on them, then the other tools that are part of that tool category will pop up and then you can select the different tool in that category. And alternatively, if you're using a PC, I think you have to right click on it and then all the other tools will come up. But yeah, you can figure that out. It's not too difficult. So the first tool is the Move tool. So, naturally this just moves things. So this that I'm moving at the moment now, as you can see on the right, this is layer 1. So this is your layers panel. So if you open your layers panel, you'll see that this is layer 1. If you add an image in it, it'll layer it over the original layer that you opened the file with, for example, which is often the background layer. And you'll see that once I move layer 1, I can't move layer 2. So nothing's happening to this layer. It doesn't even select layer 0, not layer 2. It doesn't even select layer 0. Nothing happens, and that is because layer 0 is actually locked. You can see the little lock button here on the bottom right. So if I unlock this layer, then I'm able to move layer 0. So that's a really great tool to have for backgrounds. If you are editing, like say for example, post on a black background, lock that black background layer and then you can just keep editing whatever's on top of it without editing the actual background. So locking a layer means it doesn't get touched, it doesn't get edited at all. So that's a great tool to have and to use. The next thing that I'd like to explain is the second tool, which is the Artboard tool, which is also in the Smooth tool category. So in an artboard, in Photoshop you can have different artboards. So if we click and drag a little artboard here, then it just opens up. It's basically like what it sounds like, a new artboard to the left of this one. So yeah, this artboard, you can do anything you want on it. You can move this layer to it, you can move this layer back. It's basically just another workspace to work on. It's great if you have, say for example, 3 or 4 different photos that you want to edit at the same time, but you want to see how they look next to each other. Then just open up a bunch of artboards next to each other, put the photos on the different artboards, and then you can see how they all look together once edited if you are planning on placing them next to each other in an exhibition or something. So that's a really great tool for that. So let's just delete that artboard. Okay, so this third tool is the rectangular marquee tool. So this is a great tool. It's just a selection tool. So if you want to select a piece of this and just delete it, say I don't want that, then it's great that you can use it for that. You can delete certain areas of a photo or a file. You can move it around. You can actually, you can cut an area of a photo art. So if you drag a rectangle and you go back to the Move tool, then you can actually cut this area of the photo art and you can move it to a different file. You can I don't know, you can delete it, you can do whatever you want with it, but it's basically just a rectangular tool for that use. All of the other tools, well, lots of other tools do the same thing, just not rectangular. And there's also a elliptical, single row and single column marquee tool, so those are great for that. Okay, so the fourth tool we are going to be using is the lasso tool, which is great for if you want to roughly cut out a section of a photo. So you just click and drag around, say, this section, and yeah, if you press delete, then it deletes that specific selection. And also what's great for this tool is if you want to delete the background of a specific thing, but also like very rough, I use the lasso tool for extremely rough dragging options. So if you select your little image that you want and I want to delete the rest of it, then you can hold in Shift Command I, and that actually selects all the space around that, so it inverts the selection. And then you can press delete, and then you'll see that it deletes the rest of it. And also if you want to deselect something, then that's Command D on Mac. I don't know what it is on PC. I'm sorry, I don't use PC. Okay, so on PC it is actually an Alt key. So if you want to invert a selection, so let's just quickly do a selection, then you press Command Alt I and it inverts the selection. So yeah, that's how those tools work. You'll see that there are other lasso tools available as well. I don't really make use of them. I just find the normal one is the best, but I assume this one has a particular function that this one, yes, it draws straight lines, which is also very useful for if you are a very neat person. So yeah, so then it makes a very straight angular selection. So that's also a great tool to use. But yeah, the lasso tool is great for rough selections. I mean, if you have a very steady hand, then sure, by all means, try and select your whole thing, but often it's just for rough selections. So the next tool is actually one of my favorites. I use it very often. It's the object selection tool, or actually the object, quick selection and magic wand tool. All three of them are great tools for very particular selections. So say for example, I want to select this little logo from the corner and I want to copy this logo and use it somewhere else. I use the object selection tool and I drag a little square around it, as you can see. It does take a while because it has to decipher what is an object and what is background. But once it does decipher what is object and what is background, you'll see that it cuts this logo out very nicely. It obviously hasn't selected the other black bit because it assumes this is one object, which is fine because we can always just delete that. But this is what the object selection tool does. I think it would have a bit of a hard time with all of these little squiggles and shit on my poster, but for the logo, I'd say it's very nice. If you have a photograph and there's a clear foreground and a clear background, it's a great tool to use to cut out the foreground. So yeah, that's a great tool to use. The quick selection tool basically does the same job, it's just a bit more specific. You select what you want to select and then it kind of just highlights that selection for you. So let's say I want to select some of these squiggly lines here. So I'll take my quick selection tool and I click and drag, and then it will highlight whatever you basically hover your mouse over. And at the top here you'll see there's three options for the quick selection tool. The first one is a new selection, second one is add to the selection, and third one is subtract from the selection. So if I have decided I now want to select this area, I think I want a bit more black space, maybe a bit more of these squiggly lines, and I know maybe even the heart. So I'm going to click on the heart as well. So it selects the heart, but it does still decipher between what is object and what is background, foreground and background. So it's also still quite useful. So I've selected that whole part and oh no, I've made a mistake. I don't actually want this whole black area here. So then you click on remove from selection or subtract from selection, and then you can just use this little minus thing to move the rest of the selection that you don't want anymore, and then it will subtract from your selection. And now the only selection that I have is this little area which I wanted. So if I want to delete it, I can just delete that area. If I don't want to delete it, if I want to delete the area around it, I can press Shift Command or Shift Alt I, and then that inverts the selection. I can cut out that little piece there. So that's a great tool. I use it extremely often if I'm editing photos with illustrations, if you're trying to just keep black lines from illustrations and so on. It's a really useful tool. And then the magic wand tool basically does the same thing. Just instead of clicking and dragging like you do with a quick selection tool, the magic wand tool, you just click and then it will select whatever it thinks is object. So it selected this little squiggly line very well. So let's delete that one. Yeah, so it's selected this line very well. Magic wand tool, it's essentially the same as the object selection tool. You just not clicking and dragging a box around what you want to select. You just click on something and it selects everything that's that color or part of that object, basically. So yeah, great tool to use. The crop tool is basically just a crop tool. You know, it can trim the edges of this photo if you want to crop a photo, or if you want to crop an artboard or whatever the case may be. I don't use it very often. I just use this little rectangular marquee tool and delete what I don't want. A frame tool creates placeholder frames for images. If you have worked in InDesign, you'll probably be familiar with this, but it's not a very difficult tool to master. You basically just take it. Let's say I want a nice little image here, so then I click and drag a rectangle there. I think if you don't have an image, then you can add an image into this rectangle, but yeah, you'll see it's created a nice little frame for the image that I already have on my artboard. So yeah, so that's very straightforward. The eyedropper tool, again, very straightforward. You can just pick whatever color you want. So if I want this little orange, you'll see it will show up to the right here in my little, I don't even know what this is called, my color box, color bar thing. So you can just add colors there, and you can also add these colors to your swatches. So this is the current color that I now have. So if I say add to swatches, then okay, let's call it, okay, I called it swatch 1. I by accident hit enter, but then it adds it to your swatches, and you can basically create your own, what's it called? Color. Fuck, what's it called?
What?
Your own color.
Palette.
Thank you. Yeah, color palette.
No boyfriend. And then use some Sacha.
He helped me. Okay, so if you add your swatches to your library, then you can basically create your own color palette from a bunch of different files that you've used over the years. If there's a color that you really like and that you want to use for your brand or so on, you can just add it to your swatches. And if this doesn't take so long, then I can show you. Okay, I'm just going to stop it because I'm not waiting for it. But basically, if you add it to your swatches, then you can go here to swatches and it adds it. It has actually added it here. But yes, it takes a while to add it to your libraries. Then you can access it across all of your apps, but we're not going to go into that right now. So yeah, here's the swatch. Here's a little color orange that I just selected. So it's available there for me to use now. So if you want to select something and use that color, then I can use that color. Okay, so in the eyedropper tool, no, nothing really there. So the next tool is called the spot healing brush tool. So this is really, really, really useful for if you're going to do photographic editing. So if you took a really pretty picture of your face and you had this really big zit on your forehead and you really don't want it there anymore because you're sending this image into a company or you're attaching it to a CV, or whatever the case may be, then you can remove that zit with a spot healing brush tool. Yeah, so this is basically what celebrities and influencers use to remove, you know, all evidence of texture on their skin or all evidence of marks and blemishes on their skin. So let's just use it on my poster. Let's pretend this little heart is a blemish. Then yeah, I can just click on it and it removes it. So yeah, so it uses something called content aware. So it is aware of what is around it and the color that is behind it. So it basically uses the image around it and the colors to basically create or add in what it thinks would be there if the blemish wasn't there. So that's a really useful tool, especially for photography. Red eye tool, if you want to remove red eyes from camera flashes, that's really useful to use. But the next tool we are going to use is a brush tool. So also, again, really straightforward. If you want to do some painting or illustration, it's really nice to use the brush tool if you have like a Wacom tablet or something that you can draw on that connects to your Photoshop, then it's really nice to have that for digital illustrations. But basically you can just paint, you know, you can add some texture, you can add some shading, you can add whatever you want to an illustration or to a digital image, really. There's tons of different brushes that you get, so you can also download brushes online for free. There's a ton of different brushes you can download online, but it's really useful. I actually use it a lot for shading, for if I do digital illustrations. So I'll show you a little trick. So if you take this, okay, so we want hardness, that is a hard brush. It has, okay, let's just make the opacity 100. So we're going to be using this beautiful little orange that we eyedropped from here. So if you want a hard brush, it has very solid edges. You know, it's just what a hard brush would look like if you had to say hard brush. And if you decrease the hardness to 0, from 100 to 0, then you'll see that the softness of the brush becomes a lot less, and it has like varying ranges of the color that fades into the background, if that's a good way to explain this. A really nice trick is you can head over to the top of your screen where your brush mode, blending mode is, and instead of it being normal, you can you can make the blend mode dissolve, and it actually creates little dots. So that's so great for blending and for creating shading and texture. So let's create a little bit of texture. Let's just make this orange a little bit darker, and we can, yeah, like I said, create a little bit of texture. We can actually, we could use masks to make this a lot easier, but I'm not going to use that. We're just going to pretend that it doesn't fade over into the black. Okay, so if you want to create a little bit of texture, a little bit of, you know, pizzazz, then use this tool to do that. And this just basically scatters the dots a bit more. If you make the opacity less, so it just makes the number of dots less instead of making the dots see-through. So yeah, so that looks like a cute little paint splatter. So if my poster needed a bit of depth, a bit of texture, then I would do something like that. So yeah, so that's a really great tool to have. We're just going to leave it there. I'm not going to bother trying to erase that because I didn't create a new layer, which is something you should do whenever you want to edit anything, is create a new layer, which I forgot to do. But that's okay. So from there onwards, the pencil tool, I mean, it's pretty much the same as the brush tool. I don't use pencil tool very often because it's, I don't know, I think it's a bit stupid. It just draws very small lines. But the brush tool is great. And then we can head on over to the clone stamp tool. The clone stamp tool is great for if you want to clone something on your image. So say for example, you have a person standing in front of a wall and you want to duplicate that person standing against the wall on the other side of your image, then you can use the clone stamp tool. That's not really what it's used for, but it is great for fixing, basically like also fixing blemishes and just small little errors in photographs. That's what I use it for. I often use it just to fix certain like areas of color that are a bit weird, or like lighting that's a bit weird. It basically clones another part of the photo and then it puts it where you are painting. So if you click on the clone stamp tool there and go to your poster or image or whatever the case may be, if you click on option, you'll see that a little, I don't even know what to call that, let's call it a compass. It looks like a compass. A little compass will come up, and if you click there, then that means that the cloning is going to start there. So these little stripy stripes, that's where it's going to start. So you can see that my mouse has now, well, my little brush has got the stripes where I clicked with the option, and now if I paint, then you'll see that there's a little cross that appears where I originally decided to clone, and it's basically showing me where my brush is going in order for me to clone what I want to clone. So yeah, so that's how that tool works. So it's really cool. It's actually a really nice tool for posters as well if you want to just make it look a bit cooler. I've now realized that. So yeah, really cool tool for that. The next one is the eraser tool. I have used this tool a lot, even though I know I shouldn't. I should use masks, but I just love this tool. So basically what I've been using it for this year is to create very like dreamy, not very harsh photos. So I used photography as a medium in my 4th year research articles. So I had to take a lot of photographs, but they couldn't be very harsh and they couldn't be very angular because I was exploring things that make you feel less stressed. So I couldn't have something like this on the screen, for example. So if I had to make this less stressful, firstly I would remove all of this, but let's not focus on that. But I'm going to show you what I would have done to a normal photograph. Thank you. ASMR.
Huh?
ASMR. Okay, so this is now the photo that I've opened. So this is an example of a photo I would have used for my thesis, and I'd used the eraser tool to make it look like dreamy, and I'd often put it behind text or behind headings, or so on, just to make it look more natural, nature inspired, if you must. So that is the background layer. So we're going to, okay, so we're just going to add a little white layer here so that we have a background to work on, so it's not all just, you know, little blocks of transparency. So if you go to your layer 0 and you start to erase, I would often just erase the things that look abnormal, which is this little streak. I actually quite like this shape, so I'm going to keep this shape and pretend that I'm going to be putting this in the corner of a page. So what I would do is I would use the very soft eraser first, and I'd erase what I don't want, so it already creates a soft edge, and then from there I would just decrease the opacity gradually or all at once, like we're doing now, to make it a bit quicker. And I delete a bit more and make it a bit more soft, make sure that there's no harsh edges, make sure that the background blends nicely into the photo, so that it looks as natural, as dreamy, as flowy as possible. So yeah, and often I would just take this brush. The edges are the softest, so, and if you make it bigger, it's really nice to use around these bigger edges because it doesn't create much of a difference, but it doesn't end, you know, it really doesn't end. So that's essentially what I would do. This little part here is still a bit harsh. So that's what I would use the eraser tool for, and I think it's really useful for that. You know, otherwise you could always just use it for normal erasing like everyone else in the world does, but I tend to make life hard for myself. So yeah, that's what I would do, and then we'll just move on to the horizontal type tool, and I would show you the kind of heading that I would put here. So let's just say image generation in a time of technology, if that was even a heading I would remotely use, because it's not. Settings for this are so messed up. You know, let's just say I was being abstract because I don't feel like changing all of this. Okay, so yeah, this is an example of the kind of thing that I would have done with an image like this. So yeah, it creates a really dreamy effect. Yeah, let's move back to the poster. So the paint bucket tool, the eraser tool, background eraser tool, I don't actually know how to use that. Magic eraser tool is the same as the magic wand tool. If you just click on a little thing that you want to erase, the eraser will just take that color and basically erase that color. Let's just pick another color. We'll basically just erase that color. So yeah, clicked on the orange, it erased that orange, there it erased that orange. If you just want to erase a quick solid color, that's basically what the magic eraser tool does instead of you having to go and erase all the edges. Paint bucket tool is pretty straightforward. If you just want to edit a color, let's say we want this little orange color here to be this red color, then I just click the paint bucket tool. I use my eyedropper tool to get this red, and I want this orange to be that red, so then I just get that red and click on it, and then it becomes that red. Yeah, it's basically like paint was, what we all used when we were 9-year-olds, well, in my generation anyways. And the next thing that I'm going to show you is the gradient tool. So you guessed it, the gradient tool makes gradients. So if you want to create a good old, it took me a while to get used to this tool, I must be honest, but if you want to create a good old gradient over this, let's say you want to fade it into black, or you want to put it at the top of a website, so then the bottom, you want the bottom to fade into the rest of the website, which is black, then you use the gradient tool, and it works very effectively instead of using your paint tool. So here you have different options for what kind of gradient you want. I'm just going to go with a normal linear gradient. I get radial, angle, reflected, and diamond. So yeah, really great gradients. And they also provide you with some gradient presets, so you can choose which ones you want. Really beautiful ones there. So let's just drag a line over the top of my poster, and voila, it creates a gradient. So if you're wanting to do a website, it would be really nice to put some text over here saying, you know, my 3rd year poster. Oh, these settings for text are really messed up. Let me just fix them quick, because I don't know who decided to do this.
Sorry.
Definitely wasn't him, he doesn't know how to use Photoshop.
I'm stupid, I didn't be calm.
Correct you are. So yeah, so I don't know, okay, that looks really ugly, but if you wanted to overlay some text over this poster, then I suggest you use the gradient tool, just because it looks nicer. So yeah, that's what you would use the gradient tool for. That is with the paint bucket tool. Okay, smudge tool is exactly what it sounds like. It smudges an edge. You've also got a bunch of different paint brushes you can use. The paint brushes are basically all the same for like the clone stamp, the eraser, and the normal paintbrush tool. So yeah, so you're working with those paint brushes whenever you're doing anything that's coloring in or like moving or morphing the page. So the smudge tool, basically this one just smudges all the colors. If you use a different paintbrush, it will do something else. And this is why I don't use the smudge tool, because it just takes too long to process. It uses a lot of power. Okay, so that's what the smudge tool does. It literally smudges the colors to make a big blob. It takes really long, so just make sure that you have a lot of space and that your scratch discs aren't packed, because then it's going to take even longer and it's just going to fill up your scratch discs. But that is the smudge tool. Not much to it. If you are into painting digitally, then I can imagine that it's probably very useful to you, but I haven't used it much. Blur tool and sharpen tool, yeah, just blurs and sharpens images. Let's move on to the pen tool. I don't use it much, excuse me, on Photoshop. Okay, stop burping. The pen tool, I don't use it much on Photoshop. I often use it on Illustrator to make logos and cut out parts of images, or even trace images and so on. But I mean, you can guess what it is. You can just create some interesting shapes with it. You can create logos on Photoshop, so if you're looking to, yeah, create like a logo with an image in it or something, I would suggest you do it on Photoshop and then vectorize it. But yeah, that's what the pen tool does. It just creates random shapes, and you can also change these shapes into like outlines, and so on. But that is essentially the pen tool. There's not much to it. but you can use it for a lot of different things, but I think I should rather just make a video on the pen tool rather than trying to explain all of it now because it's going to take way too long. Type tool, you saw me use it, it's just to add type. You will find all of the settings at the top and to the side. Here you'll have character and paragraph options. If you don't see that, then you can go to view, or not view, you can go to window and you can click on paragraph styles and character styles, and then they will pop up. So yeah, and you can have a horizontal, vertical type tool. And also, fun fact, if you draw something with your pen tool, let's just draw a quick shape and add it there. And if you click on your type tool after drawing this and you hover over it, then you'll see that it changes from a square to a little squiggly line through the type tool, and this is called type on a path. So then you click on that, and whatever you type will now always make the text the wrong default color for you not to see what it is. Then
Oh, sorry, I thought you were still talking to me.
no, but it's okay.
Edit it out.
No, it's fine always. You can't because you spoke over me.
And then you can restart it all.
So if you click on the path that you just made with your pen tool, then you can type on that path, which is really useful if you're creating fun things for, say, children or children's books or that sort of thing. And then the rectangle, ellipse, triangle, polygon, line tool, these are all just shapes you can create. So if you go into the rectangle, then you can create a little rectangle, and you can pick the full color, you can pick the stroke color, you can pick what kind of stroke you want. Wait, let me just, here, not on the stroke. Yeah, you can pick if you want a very, very thick stroke. Obviously that's way too thick. But say for example we want a black stroke, then it obviously makes a black border around the side of the rectangle. You can pick what kind of stroke you want, which is really great. But yeah, very basic. If you just play around with these tools, you will 100% find out exactly what they mean and exactly what they do, because that's how we got taught to use Photoshop, was just to have fun and play around and see what you can create. That is essentially all. One more thing I do want to show is, I'm just going to delete a little section of this to show this trick. So say now you got exported an image or you got sent an image and there's a part of it cut off. If it's not a complex image, okay, this is quite complex so it might not work, but if it is not a very complex image and there's a section that's just come out white, or it's come out green, or it's just come out wonky or weird, or if you just want to edit stuff out according to the background and stuff around it, you can select that area. And if you go to edit, wait, you have to click on the layer. If you just make sure your layers are always selected. If you go to edit and you click on content away full, then Photoshop looks at the content around the selection, and then it actually makes an estimate of what that section of the image would look like according to the content around it. So I mean, yeah, it's obviously not what I wanted, but it's pretty accurate. I mean, if I didn't have that there, I would definitely take this any day. I think it's more accurate than what I would have done. So let's just wait for it to load and apply, and then I can show you what I mean by it estimates what would have been there. So let's just delete that. So yeah, so it obviously has a little bit of mistake. So it has like a little line there, has a little line at the top, but basically you see it took this little line and duplicated it. It carried on this line, extended this line. It noticed that my whole image is basically just squiggly lines, so it draws more squiggly lines for you. So yeah, that's also a really, really useful tool that I use quite a lot. And I think that is basically it. There's a lot more to go at, but those are your basic left side tools with a little bit more tips and hints in between. So yeah, that is all I really wanted to show you, but I hope that you enjoyed this video. Please let me know if you did, and if you didn't, then, well, I don't know why you're still watching, and just leave. But basically, thank you so much for watching this video. If you did get to the end, please give my video a like. I would really appreciate that. And if you enjoyed this video and if you'd like to see more, design tips and tricks and hear my boyfriend scream in the background of my videos, then yeah, then you gotta subscribe, because that's the only way you're gonna see more of this content. So yeah, but I will create a very in-depth and advanced Photoshop tutorial. I basically just winged this one and went with my guts and just picked and used the tools as I pleased in this moment. So if you want me to be more organized, then I will also do that for you, because I don't like organizing things like this. So let me know if you'd want that, let me know if you wouldn't. But yeah, I love you lots, and I will see you next week.